You're watching Republic TV. I'm Crispino Nunes. Now, after UK's request, an emergency UN Security Council meeting was held. Now, UK and US slammed Russia for targeting the nuclear plant at Zaporizhzhia. Let's take a look.
The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting following Russia's capture of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. While officials say no radiation was released from the Russian attack and firefighters had extinguished the blaze at the facility, member countries condemned the attack.
This is the first time that a state has attacked a fueled and functioning nuclear power plant. International law requires special protection for nuclear facilities, and it is difficult to see how Russia's actions were compatible with its commitments under Article 56 of the Additional Protocol of the Geneva's Conventions. It must not happen again.
UK strongly slammed Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that he had violated global laws.
President Putin said yesterday that the special military operation, or as everyone else calls it, the war, was going to plan. Everyone around this table knows that is not true. President Putin misjudged the strength, resilience and will of the Ukrainian people to his invasion. He underestimated the world's condemnation of his actions.
The US ambassador termed the attack a dangerous new escalation.
We've just witnessed a dangerous new escalation that represents a dire threat to all of Europe and the world. To my Russian counterparts, this council needs answers. We need to hear you say this won't happen again, as our UK colleague just stated. We call on you to withdraw your troops and weaponry from Ukraine.
Before this, Russia has claimed to have captured the non-functional Chernobyl nuclear plant. Zaporizhzhia is, however, the first active and functional nuclear power plant in Ukraine that has been captured by Russian forces. Agency Report, Republic TV.
We're keeping you up to date with all the latest on ground from Ukraine. Now, even as Russian offensive mounts against the country, Republic TV is the only Indian channel reporting from the war zone as Ukrainians put up a stiff resistance against the Russian invasion, which has entered day 10.
Right from day one of this war, they have been left in a lurch. The reason why I'm saying it is that this is a war that has been fought by the Ukrainian people. It's the fight between Ukraine people and the Russian army. And we've seen multiple images and also we've conducted several interviews in which you've essentially seen people of Ukraine stepping up in the times of crisis. What we have seen on the ground is how civilians are now taking up arms, they're getting themselves trained, and that is one of the reasons why primarily what we have essentially witnessed is that if at all the Russian army has been slowed down, at least their movement towards some of the key cities of Ukraine, it's primarily because of the coordinated effort of the Ukraine army, the police, the border guards, as well as the civilians. And that has certainly worked in favor of Ukraine. Of course, having said that, a situation is very different down south in Ukraine, especially in cities like Mariupol, Odessa. These are places closer to Crimea where the advancement of the Russian troops have been much more faster. And that is the reason why the grip of the Russian troops in these areas have been far better than perhaps what is in up north in northern side. But over the last few days, what we have seen that the offensive on the part of the Russian troops have only increased in multiple directions. From the northern side, from the eastern side, they've only increased. Their focus has been completely on Kiev, but they haven't really been very successful. The Russian troops haven't been successful. The reason being is that if you take a look at the latest satellite imagery closer to Kiev, that long convoy of armored vehicles of the Russian troops, about 40 miles long, that has now we're being told to have been slowed down. We do not know the exact reasons why the convoy has essentially slowed down, but what we picked up from the Ukrainian defense intelligence sources is that, there are some big challenges that the Russian troops are facing at this point in time. Faulty equipments, lack of fuel, lack of food supplies, and of course the morale of the Russian troops itself. If one would say that the morale is very high, that doesn't seem to be the case, simply because what you're looking at right now is that many of the locals have confronted the Russian troops. Look at the prisoners of war that have been taken into custody. These prisoners of war, when their questioning was actually taking place by the Ukrainian army, they have actually succumbed by saying that they were not very sure as to what would they be witnessing once they enter Ukraine. In fact, back in Russia, they were told that they would be welcomed by the people of Ukraine. That's not the case, and what we are also picking up, the sentiment that we are witnessing here, is that the Ukrainian people have completely backed the government. The Ukrainian people have backed the army, and they're saying that this is no longer a fight that is actually taking place just between the two armies. This is a fight that the people believe that they need to, in order to protect their freedom, in order to protect their territorial integrity, in order to protect the territorial sovereignty, which they hold it very dear to them. And they feel that if this attack is taking place today in Ukraine, what would really stop Russia from carrying out a similar sort of invasion in other countries like Moldova, Romania, and various other countries? You've heard what President Zelensky had to say, that if today Ukraine is not saved, then the day won't be really far when Russia would carry out the same kind of an invasion in other places. And he's exhorted other countries to come together, rally behind Ukraine. But having said that, the challenges are only increasing. To say that there isn't any challenge for the Ukrainian army, it would be perhaps very utopian, simply because take a look at what's really happening in terms of the aerial bombardments that are taking place in various cities of Ukraine. The question is, for how long will they be able to hold fort? Because with every passing day, what's really happening is that villages of Ukraine are now coming under attack. In fact, Ankit, we are certainly planning to visit one such village in Ukraine, which is completely bombed, and it has been completely demolished, just to send across these images to our viewers across the world, for them to see what's really happening, how exactly is the situation right now in various other parts. Because see, the focus right now has only been in cities like Kharkiv, in cities like in areas like in Sumy. Sumy has been, I would say that it's very, very challenging, and even for those Indian students who have been stranded there. We're being told that there are still Indian students in the region of Sumy where there's been an intense gun battle.
Now, amid Russia's war in Ukraine, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that's the NATO, has been rapidly deploying troops to member countries across Eastern Europe. But it has also clarified that it has no plans of sending them to Ukraine itself, and they will not declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Here's an update on the latest NATO meeting and what transpired.
Condemning Russia for its forceful drift from status quo, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that Russia has shattered peace on the European continent. Urging Russian President Vladimir Putin yet again to pull his invading troops, he said that Russia's latest attack on Europe's biggest nuclear plant was totally unacceptable.
Russia has shattered peace on the European continent. It has engaged in a war of a scale, of a type not seen in Europe since the Second World War. Russian aggression has created a new normal for European security, where fundamental principles are contested through the use of force. The threat of pervasive conflict is real. We stand by the people of Ukraine and its democratically elected government, and we call on President Putin to stop the war, pull all his forces out of Ukraine, and engage in good faith in diplomatic efforts. NATO is a defensive alliance. We do not seek conflict with Russia.
This comes after Russian forces have seized control of the largest nuclear site in Europe. His remarks came as he chaired a meeting of US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his NATO counterparts to take stock of the West's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Stoltenberg, however, rejected Ukraine's demand for no-fly zones, warning that such a move could end in a full-scale war in Europe.
We have a responsibility as NATO allies to prevent this war from escalating beyond Ukraine, because that will be even more dangerous, more devastating, and will cause even more human suffering. So we have made it clear that we are not going to move into Ukraine, neither on the ground or in the Ukrainian airspace.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had appealed to the West to enforce a no-fly zone after a fire overnight at one of Ukraine's nuclear plants.
And of course, the only way to implement a no-fly zone is to send NATO planes, fighter planes, into Ukrainian airspace, and then impose that no-fly zone by shooting down Russian planes. And our assessment is that we understand the desperation, but we also believe that if we did that, we'll end up with something that could end in a full-fledged war in Europe, involving many more countries, and causing much more human suffering.
Stoltenberg, along with NATO allies, said that they had to reject the appeal to prevent this intensifying war from escalating beyond Ukraine. Agency Report, Republic TV.